the party of law and order. We just saw it outside. You saw these thugs. They came along. These people call them protesters. Isn't it beautiful? The unhinged left-wing mob is trying to vandalize our history, desecrate our monuments, our beautiful monuments.
It's got all different names. Wuhan. Wuhan was catching on. Coronavirus, right? Kung flu, yeah.
Wow, good morning and welcome back to AM Joy. With just under 5 months to go until the presidential election, it seems like Donald Trump's re-election strategy is coming straight from his 2016 playbook, but on steroids. Trump's campaign rallies offer a glimpse into his plan to appeal solely to his diehard supporters and to lean in on the racist dog whistles that secured him a victory in 2016. So far, he's used the nationwide unrest over police killings of Black Americans and the global pandemic to stoke racial resentment among his supporters. He's labeled protesters demanding racial justice in the wake of George Floyd's killing thugs. And he's revived the imagery of sicking vicious dogs on marchers and the law and order candidate label, rhetoric ripped from the civil rights era South that's historically painted Black people in this country as lawless. He's replaced one of his signature attacks on people from Mexico with a racist attack on China, floating conspiracy theories on the origins of COVID-19 and labeling the virus with racist nicknames that denigrate people of Chinese origin. And he's praised Confederate monuments as symbols of the American heritage. Just this morning, Donald Trump retweeted a pretty disturbing video purportedly taken in the Villages in Florida of Trump supporters chanting a racist slogan while facing off with counter-protesters.
Where's your wife, Roy? There's your wife, racist. Yeah, you got it, you. White power. There you go, white power. You hear that?
Well, alrighty then. NBC has not verified where and when that video was taken, but we do know the president saw a video of his supporters chanting white power and retweeted it approvingly and tweeted with a comment, "Great people." It's clear Donald Trump has reverted back to what he knows best and what he believes, I guess, will help him maintain power in November. But this time around, his 2016 playbook may not work out. And if recent polling is any indication, it's already failing. According to a new Fox News poll, Trump is trailing Joe Biden in key southern states in Georgia and Texas and Florida and in North Carolina. In national polls, a majority of Americans are actually more aligned with Black Lives Matter and protesters, with 66% of Americans approving of the movement in a recent New York Times Siena College poll. And even in a ruby red southern state like Mississippi, both chambers of the state legislature Saturday advanced a bill to remove the Confederate emblem from the state flag. So against the backdrop of a grossly mismanaged pandemic and global unrest stemming from multiple police killings of unarmed Black Americans, Trump's gamble of speaking solely to the amygdalas of his base may turn out to be a losing bet. And joining me now is Stuart Stevens, senior advisor to the Lincoln Project and author of It Was All a Lie, Pulitzer Prize winner and New York Times Magazine staff writer Nicole Hannah-Jones, Adam Serwer, staff writer at The Atlantic, Tiffany Cross, author of Say It Louder, and MSNBC contributor Kurt Bardella. What a great panel. Thank you all for being here. And Stuart, I want to go to you first. On this subject of Mississippi, the last state to hang on to its Confederate emblem in its flag, what does it mean that both parts of the legislature there did vote to take it down, and that all over the country you're starting to see a rejection of this veneration of the Confederacy? Even some white Americans are losing support for the monuments.
You know, it's a very powerful thing for those of us from Mississippi. I'm a seventh generation Mississippian. And when I grew up, it was really the lost cause was there. It was everywhere. Confederate flag was everywhere from bumper stickers to bikinis. And I wrote a piece recently for the Bulwark talking about how I really never thought about the flag. I mean, we said allegiance to the flag or state flag, and I never thought about we're really saying allegiance to the Confederacy. So for it to be taken down now, it's a powerful moment. I think the last 24 hours really shows sort of the history of civil rights, sort of, you know, 2 steps forward and 1 backward. We have Mississippi votes that remove the Confederate battle flag from their flag, but we have the President of the United States who's tweeting a white power video. So it's sort of our history, I think, of race, but we do move forward.
And, you know, and I think that is an important point. And Nicole Hannah-Jones, I want to go to you because the history of America is these cycles of progress and retrenchment, whether it's Reconstruction followed by, you know, the huge backlash to it, where people decided that they needed to kill those who thought that they were gaining liberation. Or Barack Obama being elected, followed by Donald Trump and this backlash. These cycles keep going on. And I wonder what you make of the fact that the cycle of trying to sort of recover from them is happening while he's still president.
Well, I think we're yet to see what this is going to bring. We see the polling on Black Lives Matter. We see the polling on the protests. And those of us who are students of history knows that America has a lot of whiplash around racial issues. And just as quickly as the polling rises on this, it can fall. That's the card that Trump is playing. That's the card that Trump has been playing from the beginning. It's completely unsurprising that what we've seen is a retrenchment of the racism that got him elected in the first place. It's been the only card. And in America, it is often a successful political card when white politicians are losing. So there's a track record of this working. Doesn't seem like it's working right now, however.
Yeah. And Adam, you know, I want to play for you what Tim Scott had to say about that white power video that we showed earlier. I mean, it's in the first 8 seconds of this clip that was reportedly taken at the Villages, which is a huge senior citizen complex in Florida, where it looked like a Trump parade of like golf carts was met by a phalanx of other residents who were yelling at them and protesting against them and against racism. And Tim Scott was asked about that video. And again, the guy clearly does say white power in the video. And Donald Trump did retweet it and say, great people. Here's what Tim Scott had to say when he was asked about it this morning earlier on CNN.
There's no question he should not have retweeted it, and he should just take it down.
Does it offend you, though? I mean, it offends me, and I'm white.
Well, listen, I mean, if you watch the entire video, you can't play it because it was so profanity-laced. The entire thing was offensive. Certainly the comment about the white power was offensive. There's no question. I mean, we could play politics with it or we can't. I'm not going to. I think it's indefensible. We should take it down. That's what I think.
It is a strange response, at least in my view, Adam. It's not playing politics. It's very clear what was said on the video, and Trump retweeted it. What do you make of that response? And, of course, obviously, Tim Scott is in an awkward position of being the only black Republican senator.
Well, Senator Scott, you know, has been in the awkward position of trying to be the conscience of his party on racial issues and trying to explain to his colleagues that these are real problems. You know, he's spoken very eloquently on the Senate floor about being racially profiled by the Capitol Police. So, you know, the president leaning into, you know, trying to appeal to his base by making racially discriminatory remarks or political arguments puts Mr. Scott, Senator Scott, in a very difficult position. And obviously, you know, anytime, I mean, you could sense the impatience in his response to Mr. Tapper. And, you know, he doesn't want to be in the position of having to defend this stuff, and he doesn't actually want to defend it.
Yeah, and yet there he is. He has not a whole lot of options. Kurt, you know, you and I have talked about the fact that, you know, Donald Trump has gone from Mexicans are rapists and, you know, NFL players who kneel are SOBs to now turning on Asian people, turning on China and trying to say that, you know, he's going to label this virus as something that the Chinese created and sent over here and sort of really stigmatizing people of Asian descent. Same playbook, just a different cast of characters. My question is whether or not he can pull that off when there's also reporting that's quite credible that he was begging the leader of China to help him get reelected, begging him, saying, what do I have to do? I need you to help me get reelected. I don't know how you do both of those two things. And also, what do you make of your former party's new tack?
You know, Joy, again, it just shows the level of desperation that Donald Trump is under right now. The fact that he's underwater and all of these polls, Fox News polls have him competitive in Texas, losing in Florida, losing in North Carolina, underwater in Michigan. These dog whistles that he throws out there, it's nothing new. It's what we've seen from Donald Trump since he came onto the scene in 2016, and he's continued it every time that he's in trouble. He tries to return to this playbook. The crazy thing about it, Joy, is at the end of the day, elections are about building the broadest coalition possible to win. And ever since he took this office, he has been doing everything he can to narrow his coalition. He's doing everything he can to hold on and play only to that Fox News base. And what we saw in 2018 is that that base isn't big enough to win. They lost 40 seats in the House that were Republican, that were in places that Democrats have never won, places like Orange County in Southern California. And the fact that now, at this time where he's bleeding support everywhere, his response to the coronavirus has showed the entire country that he's incapable of being an effective and efficient and capable president of the United States. He's returning to these ridiculous racist things, the Kung Flu designation, going after Asian Americans, blame China when, as you pointed out, he's clearly in the back pocket of China, doing everything he can to help China. And all the while, we have entities like Project Linking putting out ads that are very appropriately putting the spotlight on what Donald Trump's true record on China is. It's not a sustainable strategy. And at the end of the day, it's going to leave the GOP completely bankrupt of any support. It will take generations for them to recover if they try to after Trump is gone. They're headed towards a place where they will be in a permanent minority in both Congress as well as never getting the White House ever again if they continue to follow this insanity.
You know what's interesting about that, Tiffany, is that, you know, the Republican Party is becoming more regional. A lot of it is very Southern and sort of, you know, Western kind of based in the sort of the Midwest. But the southernness of it has been a really particular thing. The switch of the parties after the civil rights era has been pretty hardcore. And it's interesting that a New Yorker is now the person who Steve Schmidt is labeling the second president of the Confederacy. This obsession with Southern lore, with Southern generals, with Southern statues and monuments. It's a particular thing. But I'm also interested that the language of some of these guys is just getting more hard. It's getting more hardcore. It's not getting softer. It's not like they want to expand the party. I want you to listen to, as a resident of Washington yourself, listen to Tom Cotton talking about the place where you live, the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Here is Tom Cotton of Arkansas.
Washington has just over 700,000 residents, more than Wyoming and Vermont, and about as many as Alaska. Doesn't this qualify Washington as a state? Well, if it did, we'd need a lot more states because Washington is just the 20th largest city in the country. Yes, Wyoming is smaller than Washington by population, but it has 3 times as many workers in mining, logging, and construction, and 10 times as many workers in manufacturing. In other words, Wyoming is a well-rounded, working-class state.
So besides him saying that Wyoming is a well-rounded state, there was another part where he went in and said, would you trust the mayor of Washington with a state? You're right. He starts to denigrate individual black leaders in the nation's capital as if to say, you can't trust these black people to run a state. I mean, that's what at least it sounded like.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you, Joy, for pointing that out. I think that's part of the challenge here. Even, you know, we saw the white power video, and now Tom Cotton, who has been problematic for a long time, feels emboldened enough to stand up and make these types of statements. And they do that because they know they have a wide coalition of people who agree with them, who will echo those sentiments. The subtext is always the same when they reference Chicago. You know, the subtext is black people cannot govern themselves. But when you look at the history of this country, a lot of these blighted communities that are heavily populated by African Americans were destroyed by violent white provocateurs at the early part of last century. And every time groups of black people tried to rebuild, from Gary, Indiana, to Washington, D.C., to Cleveland, Ohio, to Detroit, Michigan, more white violent provocateurs would create unrest. And then that was aided and perpetuated by incredibly racist and bigoted policies that kept people in redline communities, that kept people being educated in dilapidated schools. So when I see this video and I hear this discussion happen, it makes me question all these swing voters that the media seems so obsessed with, and all these people who still just can't make up their mind, and they want to know what Joe Biden is going to do about this before they cast their vote. listen, you have a choice between someone who is a white supremacist, and we were way ahead of the curve on that last time. In 2016, I have to say, I'm petty enough to repeat, I told you so 8,000 times. And now you have a choice between someone who will not perpetuate that attitude. And so what are people going to do? And we have to be bold enough to call that out and not make the same mistake twice when a media landscape perpetuated the lie about white economic anxiety. There is no such thing when it comes to Trump voters. They are clearly based in holding hostile views on race, and that's what's driving them, and Donald Trump knows that.
And Stuart, would you agree with that? I mean, because at this point, if you're still with this guy and you're yelling white power at the villages, I mean, it's hard to see how you attract anybody who's not down with a very blatantly white nationalist agenda.
Look, I used to be able to argue with that view, but I really can't now. Donald Trump is a racist. And people say, well, does that mean that 63 million people who voted for him are racist? Well, I always pause at this because, first of all, there probably are 63 million racists in the country. But what it really means is if you're not racist, you're comfortable with the racist being president. That something else you're getting from this president is more important to you than the fact that he is a racist. And I think that's very disturbing. I mean, Donald Trump didn't create racism in the country, but he's validated. I mean, if we elected a bank robber president, probably being a bank robber would become more socially acceptable. And it's a terrible signal that he's sending. I thought what Senator Cotton did was an absolute disgrace. To stand in the well of the United States Senate and say that black people can't govern themselves. It was extraordinary. And he should apologize. There's arguments you can make about D.C. being a state or not. But that was a straight up racist argument that he made. And it was disgusting. And that's, Tom Cotton's running for president in 4 years because he sees this as the future of the party. And it's incredibly disturbing what it says about the Republican Party.
Yeah, indeed. And he probably is going to be running. And, Adam, you know, in addition to coining the term, the cruelty is the point, because it is, right? But you wrote recently, your most recent piece talks about the fact that this strategy, the Tom Cotton strategy, what these Republicans are doing, it works when you've got somebody you can easily demonize with white voters, a woman, a person of color. Now they've got a white guy. Now they've got, Joe Average, Joe Biden. And it's harder to do that. It's not working.
Well, I will say it doesn't always work. I mean, Barack Obama won twice, despite them demonizing him in those terms. But it's very clear that, that Donald Trump only has one setting on the dial, and this is the only tactic that he really has. It was the only tactic he had in the midterms when he was sending the army to point guns at poor Central American migrants as a campaign stunt. It's really the only tactic he has. And he doesn't actually believe his own rhetoric when it comes to Joe Biden. He doesn't believe that Joe Biden is an avatar of some radical left, agenda. He doesn't believe that Joe Biden is an inversion of the traditional American racial or gender hierarchy. He doesn't believe any of these things, and he can't get himself to believe it. And I think more importantly, his supporters can't get themselves to believe it. I mean, one of the examples I use is like if you went to a Trump rally in 2016, there were all sorts of Hillary Clinton T-shirts with unprintable phrases, and now they can't even sell T-shirts with Joe Biden's face on them because they're just not as scared of him.
They're not, exactly. And, so, Nicole, it is like a perfect storm, right? That, Donald Trump may be running against the one thing that he really can't argue against, the thing he wants as president. A white man, right? That is his own vision of president is Joe Biden. And so I think but anyway, I won't, you don't have to answer that if you don't want to, but I do want to give you the last word on this, because I now wonder how far this spectrum can expand. We're now seeing people talking about defunding police. We're seeing actual, dismantling of police organizations. We're seeing a real credible argument about reparations. All of this is happening. How far do you think this winds up expanding in terms of this prison before it collapses again?
Oh, God, I would never try to predict the future, particularly in this country when it comes to racial issues and racial justice. Like I said, we have a tremendously fickle society when it comes to this, and white Americans get tired of this, of black people pushing for their rights very, very quickly. So we're already seeing this playing out in Congress, where the Republicans are not really trying to approve transformative criminal justice reform. Will we be able to sustain it long enough to see big changes? I don't know. But if we study history, we know that this wide-ranging support, 70%, 75% of Americans believing that Black Americans face systemic racial justice, can decline very rapidly. And all we need is one incident that enough people think is over the top, and white America will be very, primed to move on. So I don't know.
Yeah. We'll see. And also, how does it change if the president is, rather than the current white guy, the white guy that people are not afraid of, and people say, hey, look, you got your new LBJ. What more do you want? It'll be interesting to see how this plays out if Biden actually wins. Stuart Stevens, Nicole Hannah-Jones, Adam Serwer, Tiffany Cross, Kurt Bardella, thank you all very much. And coming up, there will come a day when America will be free of Donald Trump. It's true. But his legacy, well, that will last generations. And that is next.
One of my proudest moments is when I looked at Barack Obama in the eye and I said, Mr. President, you will not fill this Supreme Court vacancy.
I was shocked that former President Obama left so many vacancies and didn't try to fill those positions.
I'll tell you why. I was in charge of what we did the last 2 years of the Obama administration.
I will give you full credit for that.
Well, thanks to his old buddy, Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump has succeeded at one thing: hacking the courts. If getting 2 Supreme Court justices wasn't enough, one of those seats Mitch stole from Obama. Trump on Friday got his 200th federal judge with the confirmation of Corey Wilson to the Federal Appeals Court. That also means there are now no appellate court vacancies for the first time since Ronald Reagan. And what kind of judge is Wilson? In a letter sent to McConnell urging him to pull Wilson's nomination, 3 Democratic senators, Feinstein, Klobuchar, and Schumer, said, quote, Judge Wilson has been an ardent supporter of restrictive voting measures, including voter ID laws that disproportionately harm minority voters. And he has shown a pattern of dismissing legitimate concerns from voting rights groups. And joining me now is Judith Brown-Dianis, Executive Director of the Advancement Project's National Office. And Judith, I want to read you another quote from a letter sent to Mitch McConnell urging him to pull Judge Wilson's nomination. And this is from Feinstein, Schumer, and Klobuchar. Quote, appointing someone to the Fifth Circuit who refers to the concerns of African-American citizens and community advocates regarding the effects of voter ID laws as poppycock is a slap in the face to Black Americans at a time when our country is working to take steps forward on racial justice, not backwards. What do you make of the fact that this is exactly the kind of judge that Mitch McConnell wants and that Donald Trump has been very happy to deliver?
As you said in your lead-in, this is the legacy of Trump, right? While we have been concerned about other things that he has done, and it seems like he's all over the place, they have been singularly focused on moving conservative right-wing judges in partnership with Mitch McConnell, whose statement was leave no vacancy behind. While he can't move any bills, or not that he will not move bills on the Senate side, he will fast track judicial appointments. And these judicial appointments are mostly white males under the age of 50, which means that these lifetime appointments are something real for us. These people will be around sitting on the courts for decades doing damage. They are anti-civil rights. They are anti-choice. They are anti-regulation, which hurts us on the environmental side, but they are pro-business, and they want to make sure that they protect the religious right.
And that seems to be the point, right? That what McConnell wants his legacy to be is that he will lay down a marker that will guard the white Christian minority as they become the minority for decades from cultural and social change, and guard big corporations from consumers and from employees, that they will guard this small group of people and put a wall around them, to use a Trumpian term, that will be made from the courts, just as the courts used to put a wall around Black and brown people's and women's civil rights. So it's a reverse, but it's not always working. I want to point out 2 instances where this plan has gone awry for the far right. In 2 landmark Supreme Court cases, LGBTQ workers were protected from job discrimination. And this decision on Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of '64 makes it illegal for employers to discriminate because of a person's sex, also covers now sexual orientation and transgender status. That was a big win that Gorsuch actually participated in, which is one of Trump's nominees for the Supreme Court. The second one, the Supreme Court blocked Donald Trump from ending DACA, a huge win for Dreamers. And in this case, Chief Justice John Roberts was the swing vote in a 5-4 decision dealing with a big legal defeat to Trump on the issue of immigration. So in some instances, it isn't working, but are cases that are coming up? Because we've had some losses too. You've had the appeals court rules that also another loss for Trump. Cases that are coming up because we've had some losses too. You've had the appeals court rules that also another loss for Trump on the border wall construction, ruled it unlawful for them to steal money away that Congress appropriated for other things from military projects and use that to build their wall. So that's another loss for Trump. But you also had
and on the
Supreme Court absolutely, but you had the Supreme Court reject a mail-in voting for all case. You had some losses for civil rights as well. Are you hopeful? The asylum ruling also went against the sort of civil liberties side. Are you hopeful as the court rolls forward?
No, not hopeful at all. I mean, one thing I think we can read from some of the cases, including the census citizenship question, is that the courts actually are not going to approve of a Trump administration authoritarianism, right? Like they actually do consider themselves to be another check, right? But it's a right-wing check. And so not very hopeful. I mean, we have important cases coming forward, including the Louisiana abortion case, which could be decided tomorrow. There's a Trump taxes case, right? There's also this important case around the Electoral College, which is about whether or not the electors who didn't agree with the popular vote can then vote the way that they want instead of the way that the state votes. So I'm not hopeful. Redistricting cases will come up in the future. Then we will see the ACA again coming before the Supreme Court. And on voting rights, he's putting vote suppressors on the courts. And so this is very troubling. And again, this will last for generations of impact.
It's a reason that you got to vote for those senators. You got to vote in those Senate races. Everybody vote, 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 because the Senate decides who gets on the court. Judith Brown-Deannis, thank you very much. It's always great talking with you. And coming up, the real reason Republicans want to keep tax-paying citizens of Washington, D.C. in permanent second-class status. More on that next. This morning, NBC News has confirmed the blockbuster reporting in the New York Times that Russia has been secretly offering bounties to Taliban-linked militants to kill U.S. troops in Afghanistan. The White House insists Trump was never briefed on this intelligence, but many national security experts are dubious. Trump likes to paint himself as pro-military, but this story reminds us that he's shown disdain for veterans before, including John McCain.
He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
He said you wouldn't have even let his son in America.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know that. I saw him. He was, very emotional and probably looked like a nice guy to me. His wife, if you look at his wife, she was standing there. She had nothing to say. Maybe she wasn't allowed to have anything to say.
How would you answer that, Father? What sacrifice have you made for your country?
I think I made a lot of sacrifices. I worked very, very hard. I've created thousands and thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs, built great structures.
And the bounty story also reminds us that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has perfectly summed up Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin.
Putin benefited from our not any holding up of that foreign military assistance. Putin benefited by the action taken by the president vis-a-vis Syria and Turkey. Putin benefited from the president's comments about uncertainty about our support for NATO. Putin benefited. The list goes on. I won't even go into the elections. Just those three, because they're the three I have mentioned to the president when I have said, with you, Mr. President, all roads lead to Putin.
Washington, D.C. is the home to more Americans than 2 states, and more than 46% of its 700,000 residents are black. Make no mistake, race underlies every argument against D.C. statehood, and denying its citizen equal participation and representation is a racial, democratic, and economic injustice we cannot tolerate.
This week, the House passed monumental legislation to make Washington, D.C. the 51st state. The bill would grant D.C. 2 senators and give its representatives the power to vote for the first time ever. Representative Eleanor Holmes Norton has been leading the movement for statehood for years, but it's up against Republicans like Tom Cotton of Arkansas.
If most of Washington was under the control not of the federal government, but of a left-wing politician like Muriel Bowser, who frequently takes the side of rioters against law enforcement, would you trust Mayor Bowser to keep Washington safe if she were given the powers of a governor? Would you trust Marion Barry?
Joining me now is Senator Paul Strauss, shadow senator for Washington, D.C. I want to give you an opportunity to answer back Senator Cotton.
Well, first of all, we absolutely trust Mayor Bowser to keep us safe. We've had to trust Mayor Bowser to keep us safe during the pandemic because we've had no leadership from the White House. We've had disproportionate, unfair treatment from the Senate that passed a bill that denied us the aid that we needed to fight this virus. So, yes, we absolutely trust people like Muriel Bowser. We trust the governors of the 50 states who've been leading us because of the failures of the administration. But the problem is she's a mayor and not a governor. And so when President Trump is going to send armed troops in to disrupt a peaceful protest to take a photo op, we don't have a governor that can stand up to them. The reason he could invade Washington, D.C., but not Washington State is because we only have a mayor and not a governor. With D.C. statehood, we get on equal footing with our fellow Americans.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important to point out that Washington, D.C.'s 700,000 residents is more than the entire populations of not just Wyoming, which Tom Cotton said, well, it's a well-rounded working-class state, unlike D.C., wink, wink, but also Vermont. It's larger than 2 states. Let me let you listen to, and I'm sure that you've heard this story before, Eleanor Holmes Norton talking about her great-grandfather who escaped from slavery and why it's so important to make D.C. a state.
Richard Holmes, the man who got us to the District of Columbia, a runaway slave, simply walked away from slavery, made it as far as the District of Columbia. Richard Holmes made it to freedom, but he did not make it to equality, nor have those in his lineage yet made it to equality. That's why we need statehood.
And here's what another Southern Senator, Mitch McConnell, I guess would say back to her. This is from June of last year.
But they had planned to make the District of Columbia a state. They'd give them 2 new Democratic senators. Puerto Rico state would give them 2 more new Democratic senators. And as a former Supreme Court clerk yourself, you've surely noticed that they plan to expand the Supreme Court. So this is full-bore socialism.
Now, that's a cute catchphrase, but how is it somehow unfair socialism nightmare to give 700,000 residents equal footing with Wyoming and Vermont, and also to give Puerto Rico equal footing? I mean, I don't understand the arguments against it. Have people made the arguments to you directly what their real arguments are against it?
Well, I think they are making their real arguments, is that they're worried about what political party the people we in Washington, D.C. may vote for are going to be representing. It's not socialism. It's not unfairness. It's the equivalent of fairness, because when you have American citizens, and in D.C. we pay full federal taxes, that are denied the equality that other Americans are guaranteed, that is unfair. And it is absolutely one of the great injustices of our time that we continue to disenfranchise American citizens who serve this country in the military, who serve this country in civilian service. But in the case of the District of Columbia, most of them have absolutely nothing to do with the federal government except proximity to some buildings, live here, work hard, pay taxes, but are denied equal voting representation. And more importantly, as we've seen over the past few months, denied the self-determination to pass their own laws without congressional approval, to pass them without congressional interference. We want to be able to govern ourselves. And when you have people like Mitch McConnell, Tom Cotton talking in code, and not exactly a secret code, that's a pretty transparent thing to say that me or the people who live in my community don't have the same rights as other Americans because we're not cutting down enough trees. We don't work as loggers. When we go down into the ground, it's to a subway and not a coal mine. It's just ridiculous. It's laughable. We are not the population that deserves not to be represented. We support this community. We pay more per taxes per capita than any other state. We pay more in taxes to the federal government than 22 other states. And this situation of the District of Columbia's disenfranchisement is rooted in systemic racism. It's rooted in the country's slavery. The Capitol itself was built with slave labor. It was important to the Southern leadership that Washington, D.C., the Capitol, be in slave territory because President Washington's chef kept escaping when the Capitol was in New York and Philadelphia. And it was just, we need to end this injustice that's been going on far too long.
Yeah, a little American history, important to always note. And it is a rather weird coincidence that the two places that they're so in outrage about receiving statehood are 47% black, D.C. and Puerto Rico. We'll just say maybe it's a weird coincidence. Senator Paul Strauss, it's not a coincidence. Thank you very much, Senator Paul Strauss. Good luck to you guys. I hope you win this one. And before we go to break, a quick update on Donald Trump retweeting a video of a supporter at the Villages in Florida chanting white power. White House Deputy Press Secretary Judd Deere says, quote, Donald Trump is a big fan of the Villages. He did not hear the one statement made on the video. What he did see was tremendous enthusiasm from his many supporters. No condemnation of the white power chant itself. Trump's tweet appears to have been deleted, however. The white power part is 8 seconds in. Hard not to hear it. Up next, at long last, Who Won the Week is back, and it's next. I am not going to make you keep waiting another second because it is finally time for Who Won the Week? Kurt Bardella, Tiffany Cross, and Jennifer Rubin are here for your favorite part of the show. It's back. Oh, where to go, where to go? Who shall I victimize first? Kurt Bardella, Who Won the Week?
My pick for Who Won the Week is the Grammy Award-winning, multi-platinum, force of nature, mother of daughters, much better half of Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, who the other day put out an extraordinary tweet that went viral calling for the state of Mississippi to change its flag. She's a Mississippi native and talked about how for her it's time that her home state reflect the current values of 2020, not the values of the 1890s, that they have a flag that everyone across the spectrum could be proud of, can pledge allegiance to, can respect. And I just thought it was an extraordinary thing that Faith Hill did this because as we talk about this conversation of social change and justice and equality, we need people like Faith who come from a community where they look up to people like her. These are the messages that those people need to hear from people like her. And the fact that we're at a point now, this inflection point, where Faith Hill and other people like the artist formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, who changed her name to the Chicks, or Lady Antebellum, who changed her name to Lady A, that people in these formats are taking a leadership and vocal role, no longer afraid of any political blowback, no longer afraid of any consequences to their career, that they're just standing for what they believe in, I think is an incredibly positive development. So Faith Hill won the week, in my opinion, because as we saw the other day, the state legislature, sure enough, voted to change the flag. The governor said he will sign that bill. That's amazing progress.
Yeah. Yeah, Faith Hill apparently has mind control over the state of Mississippi. She made him do it. No, and it's great. And the chick, I'll give the Dixie Chicks, who changed her name to the Chicks, a lot of credit, too. And a lot of people don't know that Kurt Bardella is a country music enthusiast and does a newsletter on country music. So that's a little secret thing y'all don't know about Kurt, but I do. Now you all do, too, because you all watch the right program. All right, where to go next? Let me see. Let me think. Jennifer Rubin, who won the week?
Well, you know, he's been criticized for staying in his basement. He's been criticized for not doing enough events. He's been criticized for not being exciting enough. But Joe Biden is killing it in the polls. He's killing it in the national polls. He's ahead in battle state polls. He's ahead in states he has no business being ahead in. And there are a few reasons. One is that he is smart enough to let Donald Trump hang himself. Second, when he does appear, he is far more presidential than the president, as when he commented on the bounty hunting that Vladimir Putin is engaged in. And third, his decency, his honor, his kindness just radiate through. And we are at a time where Americans are trying to rethink their preconceptions, are trying to think compassionately, empathetically about their fellow Americans who may not have the same experiences, may not have the same lifestyle, may not have the same socioeconomic background, but as a model of empathy, as a model of smart kindness, I think he really has set the tone. And the only thing that I can say bad is that we're too far away from the election. But even then, I have faith he's going to continue on. So hats off to Joe Biden and his campaign, which has taken a lot of grief from a lot of pundits.
Yeah, no, exactly. A lot of bedwetting about, oh my gosh, he's not coming out. No, he's doing exactly the right thing. He's winning by just being a decent, normal person. And as long as I think it's important that his vice presidential pick be the right pick, that he not, mess that up. That's the one sort of slip he could potentially slip up on. But he's got that one last hurdle to climb. But obviously right now, what he's doing is 100% working, in part because the guy who's in there now. And, notably a classic conservative like Jennifer Rubin being on the side of Joe Biden tells you a lot about where we are in our politics. Okay, it is your turn. Tiffany Cross, last but not least, please tell us, inform us, who won the week?
All right. Well, first, I'm so happy this segment is back. I've been holding this in. So
yes.
My who won the week is the very amazing Jemele Hill. So Jemele was tapped by Vice TV to start with her friend and colleague, Carrie Champion. They're going to be hosting a show called The Disruptors. And I love that, first of all, these two met because they were both competing for the same job, and Carrie got it and Jemele didn't, and they've just been friends ever since. So I love that about them. But also, Jemele has taken a lot during this Trump era. She's been bullied by the NFL.
Yes.
She's been bullied by the president. She's been bullied by these MAGA supporters. She's been bullied by Fox News. And she keeps winning, and she does it with dignity. And I have a soft spot because she is a trained journalist. She's an active member of NABJ, and journalists and journalism matters. There's TV personalities and there's journalism. And when those two combine, I just think it's a winning combination. So I am such a huge fan of hers and wish her well and want to say congratulations. She definitely won the week.
She's amazing, amazing, amazing. All right, so the answer, it's hard to beat all of these, but my answer on who won the week. First, let me give you my runner-up. My runner-up for who won the week is LeBron James. I know it's difficult to say he's a runner-up because he just got a $100 million investment to build a media empire. He is leading in terms of getting people to vote. Well, he and Michelle Obama. He has used his fame and his platform for good. LeBron James wins every week, and he makes Lauren Ingraham mad, so he wins a week every week. But the real winner of who won the week is sitting on this panel. It's Tiffany Cross. Tiffany D. Cross. You know why you won the week, Tiffany? I'll tell you why. Because you're giving me a break next week and letting me have a weekend off when you will be sitting in this chair. Well, not this particular chair, unless you want to come by, because you can. Because it's in my house. But you're going to be sitting in for me next weekend. Tiffany Cross will be my fill-in next weekend. Tiffany Cross will be taking over the mothership, so she will be on the Starship Enterprise, piloting us through the universe. You're going to love it, everybody. I have a sneak peek that she's going to be fierce and fabulous. You're going to be great. All right, Tiffany Cross, you won the week, ma'am. But Kurt Bardella, Tiffany
so excited.
Jennifer Rubin. Well, you either won the week or you lost the week because you got to work next week and I don't. See, there you go. It goes either way. That is our show for today. I'm going to be off next week for July 4th weekend. That is our show for today. Thanks so much for walking in. A reminder that you guys can tune in tonight. And please catch the rebroadcast of my special report on policing. This is important. It's called The Road to Reform. That's tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern right here on MSNBC. Right next, my friend Alex Witt. She's got the latest. Stay right there.